Hey, it's Dashia D.
It's JStan.
Welcome back to In Retrospect Podcast, where we look beyond the surface to find understanding.
Bring you laughs, knowledge, and culture.
So sit back, relax, and join the convo. Today, as you can see, we have a very special guest by the name of Josh Myers. He has worked in entertainment as a production assistant, showrunner assistant, and most importantly, a writer. So just so that we can better understand like you and where you come from, take us back to like the beginning. How did you go from South Carolina to now California?
Yes, so like they said, hey everybody, my name is Joshua Myers, and I am a writer originally from South Carolina, a very small town called Blythewood, South Carolina. If anyone has heard of it, probably not. It's basically the country part of
Columbia.
Columbia. Um, and yeah, so I grew up just loving anything creative, anything where I can get my hands a little messy, whether I was painting, drawing, coloring, writing, anything like that. And very early on, my parents instilled a love of literature in all their kids. You know, it was very important for them and for us to be reading and writing as much as possible. And that just kind of fostered my love for writing. I found that I was very good at creating stories, creating worlds, probably because I was and still am pretty shy and introverted. So if I wasn't in front of a TV, I was probably just sitting in the corner of a room watching everybody and listening to conversations and how people spoke with one another, how they elaborated their storytelling, and which in hindsight, I guess is the way I started working on my ability to write dialogue. And so, yeah, so I was just always doing something creative. But as life and society has a tendency to do over time, it's like, forget whatever makes you happy, find something stable and boring and secure, and just do that for the next 50 years and retire. And I was pretty much doing that. I went on to Coastal Carolina, where I was a public health major, graduated and moved to Charleston, South Carolina, where I worked at a health insurance company, pretty much calling our members, as we called them, the people subscribed to that health
Yeah,
insurance company.
they don't like when you call them anything else besides some. Some people become very. No, I'm so serious, so serious. Some people
Mhm.
become very anal if you
Yes.
call them, say, a donor or somebody that
Mhm.
just gives money. You got to
Mm.
call them a member because it sounds
Mhm.
more aesthetically pleasing to the air. But hey, that's neither
Exactly.
here nor there. But thank you for being part of the organization. I would say.
I guess.
I mean, it's so true. They were very particular about what we called them. And I have another story that's going to relate to the writing later in that regard. But yeah, so I was at this health insurance company, just calling Medicare, Medicaid members all day, checking on them, making sure they were, taking care of their health plans and their health. They never were. And I was just so miserable. I was so bored, um, so unfulfilled. And even though I was technically using my public health major, kind of a stretch to say that, but I was at least somewhat in the field. I
Mhm.
was just so miserable, and I just couldn't figure out why I was so unhappy. And then I reconnected with some friends from college because Charleston has a huge poetry scene, and so I would start attending their poetry readings, and that just reinvigorated my love for writing. I wasn't a poet, but again, I just love telling stories. And so at the time, my writing journey actually started as me wanting to be a novelist. So I actually wrote a book that has never seen the light of day, probably never will, in its book form.
No title, no
uh,
name.
18.
Okay.
It was called 18, now being adapted as a film or screenplay. But yeah, so I wrote this book and I had this writers group, and they were always telling me, I really think you should get into screenwriting. I really think you should get into screenwriting. And so I just kind of took the dive, honestly. And uh, it was kind of starting on social media. I'm 31, going on 32, really going on like 98. And
Okay,
so
you don't look your age.
thank you. Uh, but at this point, this I was in my late 20s. This was 2018, and I didn't have social media. And so I downloaded Instagram and started kind of just cold DMing people I looked up to in the industry as I, again, just kind of started the screenwriting journey and started looking up in the credits who wrote this and who produced that and who was the showrunner on this. And I just started reaching out blindly with chapters of my book. I would, reach out to somebody, hey, young up and coming Black writer connecting with another. Do you want to read a few chapters of my book? For the most part, never heard anything back, which I understand. Especially since I always say my page looked like a Russian bot because I had no profile picture, no followers. I only followed Rihanna. And so I probably look crazy.
Okay, maybe.
I mean, very
Well,
maybe.
I really want to ask you something, Josh, because you're hitting on something that a lot of folks don't do when they're trying to get themselves or put themselves in position to succeed. You got to put yourself out there first and foremost, which you're saying you're doing. You're reaching out to folks that you don't know, that have no relations to you, don't know anything about you. You're putting yourself on the line. But I just want you to talk about that process just a little bit more, as well as hit on just the whole aspect of people saying, I don't want nobody else to see my work. They're going to steal my work. That's my work.
Before we, I'm sorry. Before we, oh no, it's okay. Before we jump ahead, because that is good, Justin. I do want to know that. I wanted to point out the fact that you said when you were young, you were a reader and writer, and you like to observe. You were quiet. So like, I feel like the most quiet people, of course, you're observant, right? And so a lot of times that gives you a lot of creativity, especially to yourself. But also, I like the fact that your parents nurtured the fact that you're a writer, because I feel like a lot of times, like you said, parents are more so like, okay, when are you going to school? Are you going to military?
Yep.
You're going to school, you adopt a lawyer, what's going on. So it's nice that you had sort of, it was nurtured, but I guess, I don't know what made you, go a different route in college.
I'll touch on both. With my parents, because to them, education was everything. I have parents that grew up in the Jim Crow South. And, people always ask me, oh, is it really that bad? Because I always say I escaped from South Carolina. Oh, is it really that bad? Was it really that racist? And I just always say the Civil War started in South Carolina, and that's where I'm from. Those Confederate soldiers had children who had children who had children who had children who are now sheriffs and politicians and lawyers. So yes, it's that bad. But for them, one of the key aspects of survival and success was education. So they promoted in us a very healthy appetite to learn, and also stress the importance of that being the key to our futures. When I was younger, even though I didn't need it, my mom was very quick with the hooks on phonics, where even before it was technically around the time, most parents start teaching kids how to read. It was like, all right, do an hour of hooked on phonics, then you go to bed, or 30 minutes of hooked on phonics, then go play. And so by the time I got to elementary school, I was already Laura, I feel like I'm talking about myself too much, but I was already reading on a middle school level, as was my older brother, who used to travel around Columbia, reciting his own poetry and doing the I Have a Dream speech. So it was all about education and reading, and they truly fostered that in us. And I think because I was able to truly analyze and think critically about what I was reading, it made it that much easier to then replicate it in writing, and understanding how, not just how to write something down, but how to write something in a way that made people want to finish the book or watch the TV show. And to address the other point, yes, so even though I'm just talking on and on, I still am a pretty shy and introverted person, but I'm also very ambitious and very determined. And so I just started reaching out to people, because I was still living in South Carolina at the time. This is 2018. I had no other way of how to figure out how to get someone to possibly respond. I figured if I reached out to 1,000 people, I might get one response. And even if that response wasn't what I was looking for, it's a crack in the door, because, oh, you responded back to me. I got you now. So every now and then I'm going to send that, hey, just hope you're, well, what's going on? How's life? Kind of email. And that's what's that's what kind of started the journey, just reaching out, just trying to establish connections. And I did have the fear of, oh, what if somebody steals my work, which this is when I first started writing. So looking back, nobody would have wanted that. That was very early on, didn't know what I was doing. But it was the leap of faith, blind trust in the legal system that hopefully they would be like, well, if he sends this out, he probably has documentation that he's been working on this. Let me not steal it in case I get hit with a lawsuit. And so just a lot of faith and guessing.
I feel like a lot of people, especially from South Carolina or just towns that are not, the bigger cities, right? Atlanta
Mm-hmm.
or New York, wherever, you don't really think that you can reach certain spaces
Mm-hmm.
just based on where you're from, right? Because all
Right.
you know is what you know.
A lot of folks do feel as if though that at times their work is so pristine that somebody may steal it or do this, that, and the third. I mean, you're not going to move forward unless you put yourself out there.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you got to take a loss, to win, or take a bunch of losses in order
Mm-hmm.
to win.
Exactly.
And that's just something that a lot of people have a hard time accepting.
Mm-hmm.
But
Exactly.
also, like, I'm not wishing this on you, but let's say someone did, you know what I mean, steal your work.
Yeah.
And you're creative, you can make more. Like, it would suck, but it's
Mm-hmm.
your work and you're able to create more. That's just like when comedians steal jokes. It
Mm-hmm.
sucks,
Mm-hmm.
but your talent speaks for itself and you'll create something that's even better than what it is that they took to begin with.
Right. And if they were to take it, they wouldn't have been able to do it the way I would have. And
Exactly.
so, and like you said, you can create more. And that's just what I was trying to do. Just keep creating, just keep pushing. Um, I've started watching different TV shows from a different angle. Because again, I was always watching as a fan, but then I tried to start watching as a student. And again, it's just studying those credits and studying IMDb and who can I reach out to, who can I find on Instagram. You kind of become a little bit of a detective. You might dig up a couple emails here and there and just start reaching out, and especially people's assistants, because so many people try to think, oh, if I reach out to, I don't know, let's say Oprah, I'm gonna get in, but you need to get in with the people controlling the schedules, because as someone who worked as an assistant, that's the key. Like, be nice to them, because first of all, they're not looking to be professional assistants. They're looking to be the next Issa Rae, the next Donald Glover, the next Barry Jenkins, and they're on their way. And so if you skip over them or act as if they don't exist, by the time they are those people, they're going to remember you like, oh, you were that person that was rude to me. No, I'm not working with you. Or even if they're still working as an assistant, you're rude to them. They'll just kind of whisper to their boss, you don't want to work with that one. I'm not going to even schedule this one. Or, they just happen to miss that email. So,
Yeah.
and so,
Right. How intense does the role of the scheduler really get? Because I don't think a lot of folks really understand how intense that job really is.
Yeah, it's kind of the key to everything, because there are so many people, and not saying anything about anyone, but just in general, once you hire an assistant, they have a job that they're supposed to do. So they're probably not checking their emails. They're not always sure who's on the calendar. They can be in the middle of a meeting and still trying to be like, which one is this? Justin? Okay, gotcha. And so, the person scheduling their meetings, the person in charge of the emails, that person is the key to everything. They might even say to their assistant, hey, some people just sent me some scripts. Read the first 10 pages of each one. If you like it, then I'll read it. If you don't, put it in the trash. Because that's what most assistants are doing at these different production companies and agencies, where they're looking, people are, let's say, reaching out to an agent or a manager to try to get representation. The agent isn't reading those hundreds of scripts they get a week. They have assistants and interns who read the scripts. And even then, they're usually, because people are busy, they might read the first 5 pages, maybe 10. If you don't hook them, then they just put it in the trash. And so even if your cover page isn't formatted correctly, oh, they don't know what they're doing, they don't understand basic structure, put it in the trash. So the assistants are the lifeblood of Hollywood, honestly.
So you said that you sent out all of these different DMs like, hey,
Yeah.
I would love to work with you.
hmm
Got a lot of no's, but who was that
hmm
yes? Who was your first yes into the door?
So I actually reached out to James Bland, the phenomenal um, actor, writer, director, producer, creator, who created Giants. He's written on The Best Man recently on Peacock, just a phenomenal talent. And he did a web series, or excuse me, a webinar called Create Your Giants, where he was basically kind of giving pointers on how he created this huge web series that won Emmys and, won all these
Phenomenal series, by the way.
phenomenal series. And I attended his webinar, and then afterwards just followed up, which is always key, always follow up. And I just, sent like a follow-up message. Hey, that was amazing. Thank you so much. He responded. And then again, from there, that's kind of the foot in the door. So every few months, I would just reach out and just say, hey, hope you're well. Hey, Merry Christmas. Comment on a IG post, whatever. And at the same time, I also reached out to someone in Issa Rae's camp at the time. And and then one day, as I was keeping in touch with both of them, just kind of every now and then, hey, hope you're well. And then one day, I sent a message to both of them saying, hey, I'm going to be in LA this weekend. Maybe I'll, see you around. Excuse me. Thinking that both of them would be like, I don't know you. So, no, I'm not going to meet up with you in person. And then both of them actually responded and said, all right, cool. Let me know when you land. And I was just like, oh, I was not planning on that. And so this was like a Tuesday or a Wednesday. Now, again, I told them I was going to be in LA that weekend. I hadn't taken off work. I didn't have a plane ticket. I didn't have a hotel, nothing.
Oh, I thought
So,
you were actually planning to go.
no, because again,
Every successful story always starts just like this. I got $9 in my pocket. I gotta
right,
get across the country. I don't know how I'm gonna do it, but I gotta get there. This is how
right.
every successful story
Mhm.
begins.
Okay,
Again,
moving in faith.
yeah, that's exactly what that was just
It sounds like
delusion.
the Steve Harvey story. He said he barely had money in his pocket. He had to get to New York.
Again, I'm thinking they'll just be like, I don't know you. You're a stranger. You might be a serial killer. I'm not going to meet up with you. And both of them just said, all right, cool. Let me know when you land. We'll get coffee. So then I had to figure out that whole trip in, excuse me, just a couple of days, get to LA, met up with both of them. And then luckily at the time, the person in the Issa Rae camp, as they were working on scripted podcasts, which were huge at the time, actually also read the chapters of the book I sent him and liked them. And so we somewhat were going to start working on a scripted podcast series based on this book I'd written. But unfortunately, that fell through. But it was also such a huge blessing because he was like, oh, read this script I'm going to send you and I'm going to get you in touch with the person who wrote it. He was writing, who went on to be my mentor. His name is Mike Goyo, wonderful writer for Send Help on AllBlk, Jenny and Georgia on Netflix, Insecure on HBO. But at the time, he was working on Issa Rae's scripted podcast series Fruit. And so I got in touch with Mike. And then after a while, of course, went back to South Carolina and just kept in touch with Mike over the years, or excuse me, over the months. And then after a while, he said, hey, before I try to find an assistant locally, since you always kept in touch, since you were always, so responsive, would you want the position? And so I actually started working as Mike's assistant from South Carolina. So I pretty much woke up, did my 9 to 5, came home, had dinner, and then stayed up till like 3 in the morning East Coast time, working on Mike's stuff remotely as he was on West Coast time. And I did that for months. He would always say, when are you going to move to LA? When are you going to move to LA? Oh, I'm not moving. I don't think I'm ready. I don't even know what that's like. I'm from a small town. I don't know if I can do it. He would ask me that weekly. And I just thought he has the worst memory. And so,
He knew what he was doing. If I
right.
ask enough times, it'll get
Mhm.
stuck in his head. He'll
Yep.
start believing it. I need to move. I need to leave.
Yeah. And I'll never forget, it was a day in April, a Tuesday in April. I was walking into Groucho's Deli to pick up my lunch on my lunch break from work. And Mike just happened to call, hey, when you moving to LA? And I just thought he's gonna forget again. He always forgets. So I just said, yeah, I'll move to LA. He said, all right, see you in August, and hung up. And then I picked
When
up
you
my
go
food.
making plans, you don't have again.
Exactly. Like it was that simple for him. And when I walked out of the deli, I was already calling my mom, like, all right, so it looks like I'm moving to LA in August. And like I mentioned earlier, August 19th, I moved to LA that same year, 2019.
Hmm.
And so that's how
And
I
I
ended up in LA.
Yeah, and Josh, after all that has taken place, and amazing story to say, I must say that is extremely amazing. A lot of mind games being played, but nonetheless, it seems to all have worked in your favor. Would
Mm,
you say that you feel as if though you are where you thought you would be, like where you envisioned you'd be at right now in your career, or as far
mm.
as like, hey, I want to reach out to all these individuals and see if I can get my foot in the door. Did you ever think that you'd be this far along from that moment when you sent out all those DMs,
No.
was messaging people, calling?
Not at all. Because you hear about the grind that I've moved to LA, and 15 years later, I finally got my first break. And so I've been in LA going on 4 years this August, and I've had such a whirlwind of experiences since then. I've gotten further than I ever thought I would have in less than 4 years. One of the main shows that made me want to move to LA was Insecure, one of my all-time favorite shows. Issa Rae is like my idol. And within a year of moving to LA, I was a PA on season 5 of Insecure, and I got to meet Issa. And then by then, my mentor Mike Goyo was already writing on Insecure, and so by the time that wrapped, Mike and one of the actors from Insecure, Jean Ali, who played Issa's younger brother, uh, he and Mike are good friends, and they went on to create a show for AllBlk. And so right as I wrapped Insecure, actually the last week of Insecure was my first week working for Send Help, Mike and Jean's show. And so I got to be a showrunner's assistant, and then I got to co-write one of the episodes of Send Help, and I got to then be bumped up to associate producer on Send Help. So again, all of this within such a very short period of time, and then being one of Mike's first ever mentees when he eventually went on to create the Black Boy Rights and Black Girl Rights Mentorship Initiative. Through that, I actually got an agent um, at the end of the program year for the initiative. All of the mentees have a chance to be read by Mike's representation, and I was a part of the very first class in 2021, and so I then got an agent. And then actually just a couple months ago, I got a manager as well. And through that, I've been in some pretty, let's just say, interesting conversations. I'm hoping that, let's just say, knock on wood, some very great things will be happening soon.
Okay.
I can't say too much,
Yeah.
but yeah, I'm very, very excited about, some of the rooms I've been sitting in and meetings I've been having. And of course, right now there's a writer strike going on, but at the end of it, I'm really hoping to just continue moving forward and carrying on this positive experience I've been having so far and getting into another writer's room.
That's what you've already accomplished is pretty impressive. I'm also a huge fan of Issa Rae. You can see her book in the back.
Yeah, I see it. Mine is downstairs.
Oh, it's a great book.
Yeah.
But yeah, like for you to honestly, like I said, step out on faith because you didn't know, what was going to happen. You kind of just like, all right, I guess we're going to do it. And the worst that could happen is I don't find something and I'll just go back home. But with the writer strike going on, first of all, what is it for those who don't really understand what that is? And then does that impact you? Or how does that impact you?
Hmm. Yeah. So whenever the environment for writers isn't conducive to just being able to live, being able to write successfully, we go on strike. The Writers Guild of America initiates a strike, just as any other company or organization can strike against whoever their powers that be are. And so in this case, the writers are looking for, in a nutshell,
Mhm.
better pay. Like, we should be able to live,
Yeah.
especially in one of the most expensive places in the world. And we should be able to also work in a friendly environment,
Hmm.
um, productive environment. And so if, someone uh, creates a writer's room, and it's, let's say it's one of those mini rooms
Hmm.
where you have to crank out an entire season of television in just a few weeks, and there's only a handful of y'all in there, meaning more work on fewer people. That's not fair. That's not a fair practice. Or if I remember correctly, the last writer strike was maybe like a decade ago, I want to say, or a little bit
Yeah.
more.
2008 or something like that.
And for
Yeah.
all the folks that think this is just primarily something that's taking place like out west or in a certain specific area of the world, this is going on. This happens a lot of places.
Hmm.
Just to put that in perspective, this
Hmm.
just isn't in this one area that everybody just assumes, oh, that's just happening there. No, this
Right.
happens a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't want to interrupt your train of thought.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's happening. Of course, there's a lot of it happening here in Hollywood, but there's a Writers Guild West and East. I
Hmm.
just saw a Twitter post about someone who was at a strike down in Georgia, where some productions were filming. So it's happening all over. And yeah, and since that last major writer strike, there's been the rise of streamers, Netflix, Hulu, I keep wanting to call it HBO Max, but Max
Yeah.
now.
Yeah, they changed.
Right. So many different streamers are out here, and that didn't exist at the time. And so now, it shouldn't be that a show can generate hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue for a streamer, but a writer doesn't see any of that money.
Right.
They get paid, you know, pennies to the dollar, or they don't get any residuals, where someone can watch that show on Netflix, let's say, for eternity. It's on there for as long as they want to keep it, but a writer never makes residuals for as long as people are watching that show. And so the writers are on strike for fairer treatment, fairer pay. And I'm not in the guild yet, but completely support. I was at a few different demonstrations or strikes recently, and standing in solidarity with the other writers.
Hmm. I always find it interesting that people who are in careers where it benefits others. So for you, you're a writer, and that's TV and film.
Mhm.
Teachers, social workers, things like that. We don't get paid or appreciated the way that we should. But
Yeah,
hey.
a lot of people are thinking that, oh, you're a writer for a television show, you must make a bajillion dollars, but you have to pay out so many other people on top of taxes.
Mhm.
And then again, if unless you get to a very high position, you don't make relatively a lot of money, especially in a very expensive state. And so, it can be hard, and then, to go a step further, um, if you're an emerging writer, especially such as myself, you get staffed once, or staff meaning you get hired to write for a television show. And then once that ends, you kind of go back to the grind. It's not like, oh yeah, you did it once, you're a veteran, jump onto the next show. Take your
Yeah.
pick. You have to fight and fight against everyone else in Hollywood to get that next gig. You might not work for the rest of that year. And so whatever money you made, you have to make it last for the entire year, possibly more.
Mhm.
And then it's like, all right, time to go, pick up other jobs and do whatever you have to do when, again, Netflix is still making hundreds of millions off of what you just wrote.
Right.
Um, or if it's a small show, or not a small show, a small room, and it's like, all right, we only have X amount in our budget to hire writers because we chose to do a mini writers room. So I'm just going to hire all my friends instead of, vetting out,
Yeah.
the talent and everything. So it's a lot. And so and don't even get me started on AI. That's a whole nother
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
piece that we're fighting back and forth on, because at times negotiations have almost seemed like they're going to reach at least somewhat of a start of a settlement. But one of the things, some of these companies have held out on is choosing to use AI to replace human writers.
Mhm.
But a computer can't write down the memories and experiences a person has had. If I wanted to do a story about my Gullah Geechee grandparents in Georgetown, South Carolina, a machine can't do that.
Right.
So, they can't capture the life of John Henry Gathers. So, yeah, there's a lot of things that we're out here looking to just make fair.
And Josh, I just wanted you to talk about a little bit of. I know you did say you were becoming a part of the guild, of course, networking with folks that are like minded like yourself. I just want you to talk about the importance of networking once you got out there. I
Mhm,
just wanted you to expound a little bit more. I know you mentioned the strike
mhm,
and just being around like minded people, and just tell us a little bit about some of the similarities you
mhm.
see in yourself that you see in other people
Yeah.
that are in the same situation.
Yeah, for sure. Hollywood is all about networking. I've always heard the saying, "It's not about what you know, it's who you know," and that's never applied more than when I moved here, because it's your connections that can get you that gig, or it's being nice to that assistant that's going to help you get the meeting. And sometimes it's just bumping into somebody when you're at the bar. There's been plenty of times where I've been in a bar and I turn around, and I'm like, you're on TV. And just always, I believe at least, trying to be friendly. What's weird is some of the first advice I got when I moved out here was, you need to stop being so friendly. You're not in the South anymore. You don't need to be polite. Drop your manners. It's a dog eat dog world, but it's what's gotten me so far because, for one, I guess people aren't used to it. And so it always feels new to them. But also, again, it's just about not just making connections, but maintaining connections, investing in other people. Like I said, when I first started this journey, even before I moved to LA, every few months, just reaching out, hey, hope you're well. Hey, just checking in. Oh, I saw you had a baby on Instagram. Congrats. The the little sweet potato was just so cute. Just always trying to reach out to people and stay in touch with people. It's all about networking. And eventually those same people are going to say, oh, I heard about this gig. I'm gonna put my a recommendation in for you. Or hey, remember that time you stayed up with me till 4 in the morning working on my script or helping me outline this, or that time you spent an entire weekend being a PA on my short film and all I paid you was a few tacos. My short film just took off. They're turning it into a feature. Do you want to join in? Like, it's always about, just reaching out, not just reaching up, but reaching out to those around you, because your friends, and you need to make your friends, you need to have your tribe, as they say. One of y'all is going to take off. And when one of you make it, all of you can make it, as long as you keep those connections and have genuine connections. Because, of course, everyone is out here kind of using other people. It's like, oh, you know him? I need to be your friend. Oh, you work there? I need to be your friend. Everyone here is doing that. It's about just having someone in your corner and being in their corner on a genuine basis, on a true, heartfelt basis, because it's hard out here. It's doing a lot of work in your own time, let alone for someone else, for
Mhm.
very little pay, sometimes little to no reward, in hopes that you'll take off. And one of the things that can make or break you is having a good core group of friends, having your writers group, having a mentor, just some sort of connection. It's always about networking.
I
And
like that you said reaching out and not just reaching up. I like that.
I have to say that's not my quote.
Oh,
Um, that's a Issa Rae, Amy Aniobi quote, but I still use it.
yeah. Because I mean, it's true though.
Mhm.
I think maybe before you moved out to LA, you reaching out to them on just like a more personable level
Mhm.
probably humanize them versus them feeling like you're just reaching out for an opportunity. I mean, that too, but also just checking in is nice as well. Um,
Yeah.
I think that's how you build those genuine connections.
Mhm.
So you've worked on AllBlk and Amazon Prime's Send
Mhm.
Help. You worked
Mhm.
on Insecure. What would you say is like your dream project, if you could share that?
Yeah. Of course, someday outside of my own productions, a Joshua L. Myers production. Um, that's like my writer's name, Joshua L. Myers. Um, right now, I'm so obsessed with Abbott Elementary. I'm sure that's like everybody's answer right now because it's
Yeah.
just a phenomenal show. But I'm so obsessed with that show, and it is just such good writing.
Mhm.
It's heartfelt. It's culturally and even geographically specific, but it's also still like universally relatable, and it also reaches out to and highlights a community and a population that never gets their praise. You were talking earlier about, teachers being some of the people that don't get their praise or their money. And that show just shows you a glimpse of what it's like to be someone on the other side, especially in an underfunded school. And they do it in a way without picking on anyone, even if they need to highlight an issue or, have like their comedic relief, character. No one comes across as being picked on
Right.
or stereotyped. Everyone is on that show is just based out of love. And it would be a dream to write on that show.
Yeah. They make the hard conversations funny.
Yes,
And that I
exactly.
can always appreciate.
Yes.
Definitely. They need a
Like,
spinoff.
I'll write on that too.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah, so if this does reach the ears of somebody, reach out to Josh. Anything is possible. So if somebody tunes in, knows somebody that knows somebody, reach
yeah,
out to Josh.
yeah.
Um,
His information will be in the below in the link. Everybody, if you know somebody that knows somebody that
Mhm. I
is
receive
involved
it.
with that, reach out to Josh.
I
Put it
receive
in.
it.
I had one last question before we let you go. What is one piece of advice that you have for up and coming writers?
Mm, that's a good question. I would say to invest in yourself, which looks like a lot of different things, but I mean, unless you're just this revolutionary maverick or you just are that one in a billion person, you're not going to come out here and make it overnight. You're not going to, be sitting on a plane and look over and like Ryan Murphy's next to you and it's like, hey, read the script and I'm going to, buy it, which I think actually happened with his
Yeah.
show Ratchet on Netflix. I believe something like that happened with the person who created that show and then happened to be like next to Ryan Murphy. But anyway, that's so rare. That is so
Yeah.
rare. It's those times where you are working on your script. It's 4 a.m. Your alarm is going to be going off at 6 to go to your 9 to 5, but you have to put in your hours. You have to read every script you can come across. You have to watch the same episode of a television show 5 different times because you need to watch it once as a fan and then 4 more times as a student and figure out why they chose that dialogue, why they chose that camera angle, why the people are wearing the colors that they are. Every little thing matters. You have to read the books. You have to take the webinar. Sometimes you have to tell somebody you're going to be in LA in 2 days and then spend that money on on a plane ticket and get
Yeah.
your behind to LA. Like you have to do whatever you can because best believe there are 5,000 other people doing everything they can to take your spot, especially in a world where nowadays diversity can mean being a white woman. It's like, all right, we checked our box. It's like she's a woman. It's like, okay, but you know, the black woman, the brown woman, the queer woman, the woman in the woman who's differently able, like we all need our spots too. And we're all unfortunately forced to compete for the same spot. So if someone else is putting in 1,000%, you have to put in 1,000,000 because you're fighting against other ambitious people and other very privileged people. Because again, once you start making those connections, you can be, I mean, you can honestly be like the worst writer in Hollywood, but you might know the right person.
Yeah.
And so you have to invest in yourself, whatever that means, financially, time-wise. You know, like myself, for the millionth time, you know, I'm a shy person, but when I get out here, closed mouths don't get fed. So I have to go to the mixers. I have to go to the different events, and I can't just stand in the corner and be like, hi, somebody talk to me. I have to make myself walk up to somebody and say, hi, I'm Joshua L. Myers, and this is why you need to know me. Like, it's those moments. You have to make somebody remember your name. You have to take the time to work on your scripts. Because again, that book I wrote, that's not going to go anywhere. That I look back at some of that writing, and I was like, what was I going through? What was I thinking? Like, you have to constantly work at yourself, because the writer you are right now, you'll be stronger a year from now. And that increases your chances of getting hired. And then more importantly, getting hired again. So invest in yourself.
Yeah. Yes. I don't have anything else to add to that. Period, exclamation point. Well, thank you, Joshua L. Myers, for joining us today for the conversation. It was very refreshing and enlightening at the same time.
Oh, thank you.
I mentioned earlier, somebody knows somebody.
We'll make sure to include his information down low if you want to reach out to him for some advice, want to talk more. I have been Dashia D.
And I've been JStan.
Join us every other Friday at noon.
Always remember to like, comment, and subscribe.